Memorex. It's the most recognizable name in computer supplies and accessories. For over 30 years, Memorex has built their reputation on their unique understanding of the needs of the PC user and has been on the forefront in creating products to meet those needs. Memorex is proud to bring you this instructional videotape and to play a part in helping you master all aspects of the personal computer.
If you use your computer for anything more than a doorstop, the data you've stored in it is probably pretty valuable to you.
Valuable. Now there is an understatement. You know, Mary, before I got my PC, I used to make notes on little scraps of paper and then I'd tuck them into my pockets for safekeeping. All my important ideas, stock quotes, prices.
And were they there when you needed them?
Well, I'd hate to tell you how many of those notes never made it through the spin cycle. But now I use my PC for just about everything, and all my valuable information stays in one safe place.
Well, the only way to be sure your data is really safe is to make a habit of backing up your hard drive regularly. Backing up means copying the data to some other storage medium so you can retrieve it if ever you need to.
Backing up is easy. Just imagine. Software that can remind you when it's time to back up the data, or even take care of the whole backup process for you.
The backup method that's right for you will depend mostly on how you use your computer, how much data you create and store, and how important that data is to you.
You know, Mary, there is a saying that there are two kinds of computer users. There are those who have lost their data and those who will. But you can avoid facing a data loss nightmare if you simply back up.
That's right. Now, you can view this tape from beginning to end, or set the counter on your VCR to 00 now, and use the table of contents as a guide to any topic. The beauty of a hard disk is that it lets you store incredible amounts of data in one place.
In fact, most hard disks represent an average of 2,000 hours of work. Your work, and that time equals money.
Now, the same asset, the ability to store large amounts of data, is what makes hard disks potentially risky. Because if your data were to disappear, it could take you days or even weeks to re-enter it all. And some of the data would be simply lost forever.
Now, we're not trying to frighten you, but the fact is, hard drives do crash. And it's not a matter of if, but when a drive will fail. An electrical surge, a mechanical or software failure, even dust can cause a hard drive to fail. Your data is also vulnerable to viruses, the possibility of theft, magnetic interference, and natural disasters too, like fires, earthquakes, and floods.
Not to mention human error. Unfortunately, it's not uncommon to accidentally delete a file or reformat a disk. Human error is especially likely if you're not the only person who uses your computer.
But the effects of all these scenarios can be minimized if you back up your data regularly. Now, backing up is a little like flossing. No one really likes to do it, but you sure do want to hold on to your teeth, or in this case, your data, for as long as you can. So what do we need for backing up? Floppies, software, data cartridges?
Whoa, Paul. Before you rush into anything, you need to develop a strategy. The choices you make depend on the amount of data you need to protect, the size of your hard disk, the amount of time you want to spend on the process, and the most cost-effective way to store your backed up data. Start out by asking yourself a few basic questions, and your answers will help you to determine which backup medium will best suit your needs. For example, which files need to be backed up?
Well, I already have copies of all my operating software, my word processor, my spreadsheets, my database program, and so on.
Okay, good, Paul. Now, you should have both the original installation disks and the backup copies you were instructed to make when you opened each software package. You won't have to include it on your scheduled backups, but backing up a configured copy from your hard disk regularly can save you a lot of time. You'll want to focus on files that get updated or changed.
Okay, what else?
Well, once you decide which files to back up, figure out if you'll need to make copies of the file every time you back up, or just when you've made changes. Backup software can take care of either full or partial backups.
Now, can you give us an example of why you choose one over the other?
Okay, sure. Let's say you work in a spreadsheet file or a database every day, and it's important for you to have separate records of each day's transactions. Each time you back up, you'll want to copy the entire spreadsheet file or set of files.
And if I wanted to free up some space on my hard disk, couldn't I make backups of old files I'm not using anymore? I mean, that way I still have copies if I need them later on.
You're absolutely right. That's called archiving. Once you've backed up completed files onto floppies or tape cartridges, you can delete them from your hard disk. Then if you have to get into those files again, you can simply restore them onto the hard drive.
All right, so far we've figured out which files to back up and whether to make full or partial backups. But it's beginning to seem like keeping track of all this could get complicated. I, for one, have a lot of files on my hard drive.
Okay, well, you can install backup software to keep track of what you want done. You can instruct it to back up only one directory, to back up certain files monthly, to make full backups of everything, or just to back up changes. This is called setting up your preferences. Now, the important thing is to set up a schedule that you feel comfortable with and follow it.
Now, if you don't have to back up a lot of data, you may find that floppies are all you need. Now, if you have a 3.5-inch drive, you'll need fewer floppies than if you're backing up onto a 5.25-inch disk.
There are two ways to back up onto floppies. The first is to use the backup or copy commands from your DOS software. When you use copy, the file must fit in the available disk space. With the backup command, the file can be compressed. Just be sure to check your manual on the differences. The drawback to this method is that it's a lot like driving a car without a gas gauge. It's up to you to remember to back up your drive and keep track of your files.
The second floppy method is to use a commercial backup program, such as Fastback or Norton Backup. Here, the software manages the entire backup process and prompts you to insert floppies as needed. This method can be pretty time-consuming. You have to stick around for several hours to feed in the floppies.
Neither of these methods requires any additional hardware, just a supply of floppies and some time and attention.
A third alternative is to install a tape drive that uses data cartridges for backup. Now imagine, a single one of these cartridges can hold up to 250 megabytes. Now that equals a whole stack of floppies. Now Mary, these tape drives have their own software, is that right?
Yes, they do, Paul. The software can be programmed to handle backup at any time, even during your lunch hour or at night. You don't have to be present, but if you'd rather be there, some systems allow you to use your computer while backing up.
Now Mary, are all these data cartridges interchangeable?
That would be too simple now, wouldn't it? There are different types and formats of cartridges that vary with the amount of data they can store. The most common cartridges are called Quick for 1/4-inch cartridges.
Older machines primarily use Quick 40 tapes and can store 40 to 60 megabytes, while the newer machines are geared for Quick 80 tapes, which store 80 to 120 megabytes. Or if your drive is capable of data compression, it can store as much as 250 megabytes. Large computers, workstations, and networks often back up on 5.25 cartridges. It's amazing to consider that these tiny cartridges are capable of storing so much information. 80 megabytes. I mean, that's almost the capacity of my hard drive.
I know, and that's why these little cassettes are becoming more and more popular.
So I guess that's one way to decide which system to buy. Get one that will hold as much as your hard drive, or even a little more if you think you might want to archive your data or possibly upgrade your PC someday.
That's a good guideline. Otherwise, you'll need software that will back up to multiple tapes.
Now Mary, do the tapes need formatting, just like floppies?
Yes, they do. But before you start, you're going to need lots of time to format. It can take up to 2 hours to format a tape. Or the easy way is just to buy them pre-formatted and be ready to back up immediately. If you buy pre-formatted tapes, make sure that they match your drive and software specifications.
Now we're going to show you how to install one of these tape drives in just a minute. But first, let's take a look at the two types of drives, internal and external.
External tape drives cost a little more than internal drives and can either hook up to a parallel port or some may require a slot for a separate controller card. However, if you don't have an available drive bay in your PC, you'll have to get an external drive.
This is my favorite part, where we open up the PC and really get techie.
Okay, let's get started. I've got the tools right here. Now all we're going to need is a small flat-headed or Phillips screwdriver, depending on your PC.
Make sure that the screwdriver is not magnetized, so there's no chance that it will destroy any of the data. A magnetized screwdriver is a special screwdriver with a magnetic tip for picking up screws. Just use a regular one.
Clear off some space on your desk or table so that you'll have plenty of room to work. And be sure that you have good light to work in.
If your computer is already off, fine. If it's on, save all your data and then turn off the computer, the printer, monitor, and any other peripherals. If all these are plugged into a surge protector, simply turn that off.
You also want to take one other safety measure, which is to ground yourself before opening up your computer. Sparks from static electricity could affect the circuitry or destroy data.
Now the simplest way to ground yourself is to touch anything metal on the back of the PC. The computer is grounded through the three-pronged power cord from the computer to the wall outlet.
Next, detach all the cables and unplug the power cord from both the wall outlet and the power supply. Find the main case screws and remove them. Usually there's one in each corner of the back plate and also one in the top center. Don't confuse the main case screws with the smaller screws that hold the power supply in place. And make sure that you put the case screws in a safe place. A dish or even a lock-seal plastic bag would be a good spot. To remove the case, just grasp the lid and slide it backward slowly, making sure you don't catch it on anything inside the computer. Once the case is far enough back, lift it up and off and set it aside. Not every PC case slides off the same way, so be sure to check your manual.
And now that the cover is off, let's take a look inside the PC.
And later, you can watch the tape again as you look inside your own PC to locate the components we point out.
First off, take a look at the microprocessor chip, which is the brain of the computer. It's also called the CPU, for Central Processing Unit. Now over here is the floppy disk drive. If there are two drives, they're either stacked on top of each other or side by side. This is where we'll be installing the tape drive backup system. To the left of, or underneath the disk drive, is the computer hard drive. These are the drive's controller cables, which connect to the controller card, which is plugged into the motherboard. The controller card manages the transfer of data to and from the drive.
This is the computer's power supply, and here are the cables. These cables bring power to the drive, and these are the motherboard's power supply cables. They plug into two sockets right here on the PC's motherboard. The tape drive we're installing fits into any available drive bay, whether it's a 3.5 or 5.25 inch drive. Not all tape drives fit in both, so read the fine print while shopping and buy one that's going to fit your computer. If your bay is the small 3.5 inch size, you'll be able to install the tape drive directly. If not, use the conversion hardware supplied with the tape drive to provide a frame for the drive. We'll demonstrate this process. To mount the tape drive in the conversion assembly, slide the drive forward until the screw holes on each side are lined up properly. Hold each screw in place as you insert the screwdriver through the holes in the bottom, and tighten. Once the tape drive is anchored in the conversion assembly, you're ready to install it in your drive bay. Remove the protective cover from the empty drive bay. slide the tape drive into place. These are called rails. If you need rails for a proper fit, just attach them to the conversion assembly with screws. Once the tape drive is positioned securely, now see if you can locate a spare power cable with a mini connector inside your PC. Connect the mini connector to the tape drive power connection, making sure it's lined up properly. If your spare power cable doesn't have a mini connector, use the conversion cable provided with your tape drive as an adapter. In this case, attach the mini connector to the tape drive and connect the other end to your PC's spare power cable. Now you're ready to connect the tape drive to the floppy controller card. This is the data cable. See the colored stripe? This indicates pin 1, and it tells you how to line everything up. Pin 1 on the cable connector has to plug into the pin 1 side of the connector on your drive or controller card. Trust me, you don't want to make a mistake and get it in backwards. Just look for the colored stripe and simply line up pin 1 of the connector with pin 1 on the rear of the tape drive and connect the cable.
Now, if you don't have a free connector, just use the data Y cable provided with your tape drive instead.
Before you disconnect anything from the floppy controller, make yourself a little diagram of where pin 1 is located. Then disconnect the data cable from the floppy controller card. Reconnect this cable to the center connection of the data Y cable, like this. Then connect one end of the data Y cable to the 34-pin connector on the tape drive. And connect the other end to the existing floppy controller card.
Of course, cables vary depending on your PC, so read through your manual to determine which cable to use.
Also, some tape drive manufacturers offer toll-free technical support to guide you through the installation. But, as you've just seen, it really isn't very difficult.
When your cables are connected, make sure the drive is secure. Replace the cover on your PC, including all the screws you've removed. Reconnect your power and peripherals, and you're ready to use your tape drive.
Once you've put the PC back together, you're ready to install your backup software. Read the appropriate sections in the manual and follow the screen prompts to configure your backup program according to your preferences.
You know, I mentioned before that the data cartridges can hold up to 250 megabytes of data, but I don't think we mentioned how they do that.
Well, that's called data compression. And that's right, most backup software has the ability to compress files so they take up less space. That way you can fit even more data on one cartridge. Try having a cartridge for each day of the week. Make a routine and stick to it. But it's also a good idea to keep more than one set of backup files. The manual that comes with your software contains a full explanation of the backup process and strategies, so make sure you check it out.
Mary, anything special about storing backed up floppies or tapes?
Well, you need to store them away from heat, moisture, or any magnetic fields, just as you do with all floppies. Also, some people feel safer if they keep a full set of backup files off-site.
Like in a bank vault?
Right, or some alternate location. It's really up to the user to decide what makes their data most secure.
By now, you should appreciate the need to back up your hard drive and have a clear understanding of your alternatives. You know, it's not a matter of if, but when a hard drive will fail, and that you can head off a potential disaster by making a habit of backing up your data. Now, you can use DOS commands with floppies, back up software with floppies, or install a tape drive and back up to data cartridges. Tape drives can be programmed to back up in your absence and to help you avoid downtime. With data compression, you can store as much as 250 megabytes on a tape cartridge. And as you've seen, installation is simple.
If you need further review, rewind to the table of contents and then fast forward to the chapter heading of the segment you're looking for.
Now you know Murphy's Law. You're only going to lose data when no other copy exists. Don't waste any time getting your backup program underway. Your data is much too valuable to lose.
Memorex has been proud to bring you this videotape. In addition to our video library, Memorex brings you the most complete array of products specifically created for the computer user. Paper, storage, accessories, cleaning products, input devices, power protection devices, and ergonomic products to keep all your computer experiences happy ones. Look for them at your local computer supplies retailer.